Hi, AJ Hartley here, novelist, Shakespeare professor, fan of various elements of Japanese music and culture, and today I'm talking about a Netflix show called The Greatest Teacher.
目を開けると、そこは1年前の始業式。そこから私は死ぬ気で生徒と向き合うことになった。なぜなら、この生徒たちは1年後、私を殺す。30人の容疑者なのだから。それでは授業を始めます。
So this is a show with an interesting premise. It's about a high school teacher played by Maya Matsuoka, who plays Rina Kujo, who's the teacher. And on graduation day, one of her students pushes her off a balcony and kills her, but she doesn't see who it was. She then wakes up at the beginning of that previous school year. So she then has to go through the school year while trying to figure out which student is going to try to kill her at the end of the year and how she can prevent that from happening. So it's an interesting premise, right? It's good. So it's a broadly realist show with this kind of, for want of a better term, magical realist twist to it. And, you know, of course, in the course of the show, what we figure out is that she has to become a different kind of teacher. She has to sort of figure out all these different things that are going on in her classroom, the various bullyings, particularly. This is a very Japanese preoccupation. Bullying and the sort of the process by which certain students are pushed out of the popular groups, you know, and isolated and ridiculed and so on. And the way that this creates a sense of the various conflicts that underscore everything that's going on in her classroom.
どうしたんですか？皆さんこんな時間に集合して。
いや実は受験シーズン始まる前にクラス旅行行こうって話で盛り上がっちゃってさ。でなんだっけ？餃子ツアーの方が一歩優勢って感じだっけ？そう。
それでは被告鵜久森かなうは1年間の学業縛り3教科の刑に処したいと思います。
すみません。先ほど科学準備室で入れさせてもらいました。
あれって盗聴器？
みなちゃんなんか勘違いしてない？あれよ、学業縛りってその
倫理、現代国語、地理。
この教科の教科書を見せてもらってもいいですか？
これ開けていいですか？
鵜久森さん嫌がってんじゃん。やめてあげてよ。ダメだよね。
And she has to figure out how to deal with these individual cases in order to be a better, tougher teacher. And the toughness is one of the things that really surprised me about the show. The show was made in 2023, so it's a fairly new show. But there's not a tremendous amount of room for the conventional TV forgiveness motif, right? Where people who get caught doing things wrong are very apologetic. You know, there's a lot of bowing and crying in a lot of these Japanese shows, and there is in this as well. And I was amazed at how frequently the people who have been wronged respond to this by saying, yeah, that's fine, but I don't forgive you. And it's very unconventional. I was trying to decide if this is a new trend in the way that these things are told or what it is, but it is quite striking to say you don't get to offload the responsibility of all the terrible things that you've done simply by saying that you're sorry and you feel bad. And this is has been a persistent issue in Japan for many, many years, right? That this sense of people coming forward, you know, businessmen and politicians and so on, acknowledging that they've done something bad, you know, and saying how sorry they are, and then going on with their lives, you know, and the sense that accountability is not always something that gets pursued properly. But I think part of what makes this show interesting is that it has to sort of grapple with what accountability actually is. And in this case, particularly since we're dealing primarily, not exclusively, but primarily with children, the accountability is tied to change in the lives of the people. If you've done bad things, it's not enough to acknowledge those bad things and then move on with your life. You have to integrate, and this is why the withholding of forgiveness is important, because you have to internalize the things that you have done, not just so that you feel bad about it, but because you then have to carry that stuff with you forever and make sure that you never do anything like it again. And so what the teacher is trying to do is change people. And in the process, of course, change herself and change the entire consequences of her actions in this previous life, right? Where she's getting basically a do-over for the year. And in the course of the story, it gets complicated when she finds out, I mean, she's maybe not the only one who's getting the do-over. So, you know, and again, also there are domestic issues. She's married, but the relationship is a little bit on the rocks and may not survive the year. And so she has to deal with that. So there's a lot of interesting stuff here. And again, it's quite well performed. It's not one of those shows that uses very over-the-top, very broad acting. As I said, there's a lot of bowing and crying. There's a lot of dramatic, emotional explanation. There's a tendency, I think, if the show has a weakness, it does tend to get a little talky, a little over-explanatory about what needs to happen or what's wrong. But it's still quite compelling. There's a nice little cameo by Utaha, who is the lead singer the new lead singer, newish, for Suyobi Campanella, Wednesday Campanella, who is one of those very quirky contemporary Japanese pop, very visual, and you know, I sort of first saw her on The First Take. And she's a very compelling, interesting, quirky kind of presence.
踊る暇があったら発明して歌う暇があったら発明してライブのブッキング決定発明してそんな発明王に俺はなる踊るシスンシン歌うシスンシン踊るシスンシン歌うシスンシン
And she's in this as a student, but also, interestingly, as a student who is also working as an actor and musician. So, and that affects the dynamic of the classroom. And it also means that there's an opportunity for her to perform as herself, kind of. So there's a sort of interestingly meta dimension to the show in that respect. And she's there all the way through. I was really surprised, and it's quite good. In some ways, the individual episodes are, to my mind, slightly more satisfying than the final resolution of the show, which I don't want to say too much about, but for me, it didn't work as well as it might have in terms of the solving of the mystery part of the show, but I still found it very satisfying on a character level. And by the end, I think you realize that the title, The Greatest Teacher, is not as crap as it initially sounds, because it gets a sort of tweak. That's all I'm going to say about this. So check it out, The Greatest Teacher. As I say, it's on Netflix at the moment. And I hope you like it. As ever, please like, comment, subscribe. Check out my other channel, my Weird Writing Life channel, which is woefully undersubscribed. Check out my Patreon page. My patrons get to see these videos before anybody else, and their sustaining assistance keeps the channel going. Check out my little Dashery store, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.